back to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. We've heard from countless designers on this podcast who've entered the industry as a second career. And inevitably, every single one of those of your peers that has done this, they've had the realization that they have brought with them from their previous career those all valuable Eric Award transferable skills, right? My guest today, Leigh Palantino, experienced the same thing. She started a career in fashion, and then she pivoted and brought with her the many skills from her fashion design career that has guided her in her philosophies, her design style, and in the way she cultivates a memorable experience for her interior design clients. Her story brings some lessons that are a little bit different than just being brave enough to make the jump into the second career, which we all know can be quite scary. But for Maria, turns out the real challenge was giving herself permission to leave behind not just her expertise in the other career, which she thought she was going to leave behind, right? But something she had worked so hard to achieve, and then to have trust in herself to build something new. Now, before we talk to Maria, I want to talk to you about LuAnn University. LuAnn University is your go-to to learn the business skills that your design education, whether that is from actual design school or the School of Hard Knocks, did not quite teach you. Each department and class is designed to provide targeted, proven instruction in key areas for profit and growth, all specific to either an interior design business or a window treatment business. These are the things that you need to learn, but always wonder, where do I go to learn this? How do I set up QuickBooks the best way for a design business? How does the design build process work? And how do I create a spec book for a builder and for a client? How do I set up proven systems to run my business? Specifically, we have courses for both interior design businesses for process and system, as well as window treatment businesses. Okay. Now, for the last 3 years, we have always run a fall and spring semester. So if you're a longtime listener, maybe you're thinking, oh, it's going to open up soon. But we're switching it up, and we will be running only one semester a year in the winter. So look for registration for LuAnn University to open up in November 2023, okay? Now, keep in mind, this is great timing, okay? Because this is going to be about the time when your accountant is going to say to you, hey, do you have any expenses you can use to offset these taxes that I'm going to be throwing at you, right? And you can say, heck yes, I am going to invest in myself so that I have to offset even more profits next year. How does that sound, right? Now, as a teaser alert, attendees of LuAnn Live in November 2023 in Orlando, Florida will be the first to have crack at registration, and they will be offered the lowest prices for LuAnn University. In the meantime, start planning what you're going to tackle in your business in the first quarter of 2024, okay? Go to LuAnnUniversity.com to pick out the classes that you know you need to up-level your business, okay? All right, now, I'm so delighted to share this conversation with Maria and for you to learn what she has to say about her journey to interior design. Hey, Maria, thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. Thank you so much for having me.
Maria, off air, it's funny because everybody knows you have to fill out an intake form to get on the show. And, that was interesting. And we're going to get to a lot of the information on your intake form that you want to share. But I learned something off air that I think I want to start the show with, how you came to learn about this podcast, A Well-Designed Business, because you have been listening for quite a while now. Tell us that story. I think it's helpful and interesting to know.
Yes, so life fully does come in full circle as I was teetering on two different career paths, my past being fashion design and being curious about entering into the world of interior design. I was given your podcast as a tool to navigate through truly what I didn't realize I didn't know for all things interior design. So, not only was I able to get some business advice, but also just get some really amazing perspectives from other professionals in this field. And now, being here today, I hope that I can be a voice of reason and some form of inspiration for others who may have been in my shoes as well.
I love it. I love it because what I love is how you had your the colleague that referred you and yourself had the awareness of, what you don't even know you don't know yet. You're considering this switch into this career coming from a big career in fashion design,
Yes.
not just like I was doing blah blah blah, like you were doing runway work and design for some big names, which we talked about in the
Yes.
intro and all the things. So that's it, and I love that because it's so funny. It's one of my things with everything I do. It's every single interview I do. It's like, okay, what am I going to learn that I didn't even know I wanted to know or I needed to know? And so it's so, I love when I meet people that have that frame of mind is basically what I'm trying to say. It's knowing that there is always room for one new idea, one new aha, right? And of
Absolutely.
course, going into a completely different field, I'm sure as you listen to all of the amazing guests that we've had on the show, it was like, oh, there's a lot here I didn't actually know, right?
Absolutely, yes. But that's what was so inspiring to me. I think the risk of leaving a field that I devoted my life to and really studied my whole life getting into fashion design, to know that I wasn't the only one that was changing career paths and entering into interior design. There were other people that have come from many different walks of life that have entered into interior design and have fulfilled that creative piece in their heart and have created businesses that they love and truly live by. So I think that really was a nice form of encouragement, knowing that being myself, I was going into this just with me. No other voices of reason, no other creative brains going into the business. So that was great. And I'm super happy that I was sent your podcast and had all of those other guests encouraging me, whether they knew it or not.
Right, right, right. So the thing is, I said to you also off air. So knowing that someone handed the podcast to you and knowing that the different lessons and the ideas and the concepts that you learned by listening, what are you coming here today? What is your goal in coming here today and talking to your colleagues? And it's around that concept right there, but go a little bit more directed to us. What are you really hoping that somebody out there hears?
Yes. So I really have to say that the the path in life which you're presented, or the career path or the profession that you dedicate your life to, isn't always where you will end up, and that's okay. And I think it took so long for me to be okay with that, because I am type A. I must have a plan and I must have a backup, but at the same time, I had such a strong feeling in my heart to just go for it, and to know that my past in fashion could easily be a parallel for me entering into this world of interior design. Because just as you would source color palettes, just as you would source fabrics for a collection or for an outfit, you can do the same thing for someone's home and source equally amazing forms of inspiration and really still fulfill that creative bucket, but get past the point of knowing that in the end, it truly will work out. Whatever your passion is, people see it and they will follow for sure.
So if I'm hearing you correctly,
Yes.
and you're going to correct me if I'm
Sure.
misunderstanding it, but what I think I'm hearing is not so much. I mean, I hear the lesson. We call it our Eric Award transferable skills, right? I'm hearing
Yes.
that you acknowledge that, hey, sourcing for an outfit or coordinating patterns and textures for an outfit, parallels with the work for interior design. But if I'm hearing you correctly, I don't think that was the big aha for you. If I'm hearing you correctly, I think what you're saying is that for you personally, there was a difficulty in like giving yourself permission to work in one industry for
Mm-hmm.
X amount of years
Yes.
and then actually saying, hey, this isn't right. Like it almost
Yes.
was like, how could I say it's not right? I've done it. Is that what the
Yes.
problem, the crux of
Yes.
it was,
I
Maria?
was definitely feeling burnt out in the fashion industry and I wasn't feeling fulfilled, but I felt like I dedicated so much of my life to that. So I felt like I was abandoning so much effort, time, love that I put into that. And I wasn't fully allowing myself the permission to move on to something new. But I didn't know how much more fulfilled and how much happier I would be, one, pursuing interior design, but two, having my own business, which I think those two things hand in hand really have given me a whole new perspective on being creative and doing my own work.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So I just have to actually do a qualifier here. I don't know if you're listening to this on a podcast app or you're watching it on YouTube, but this is like 4 or 5 times that Maria said so much time. So and you look like you're about 24 years old. Okay. So now I have to say, how
Absolutely.
many years were you in the fashion industry?
Okay. So I will give a little context. I have been sewing and creating my own clothes since I was 8 years old. I am
Okay.
currently 28 years old.
Okay, so I wasn't far off.
You're not far off at all. But with that being said, that is where my passion started.
It's a lifetime.
It's a
of thinking and
lifetime
doing
of
this.
realizing I can create whatever is in front of me. The opportunities are endless. So I started at that young age, and when I was old enough to realize I could make that a career, I pursued classes. I pursued all different really accreditations for fashion design. And then when I was old enough, obviously, I received my Bachelor of Science in Fashion Design. So it really truly is almost lifelong. So you can understand
I hear you now. Yeah.
how I was truly committed to that and walking away from something that felt so true and immersed in who I was truly difficult. But
That's interesting.
life presented an obstacle for me, which allowed for it to feel much more okay.
Okay. And so first of all, I'll ask you about that in a second,
Sure.
but I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that, right?
Yes.
So I'm really feeling this heaviness that I think you almost are talking about. It's like since I'm 8 years old, this is what I knew I wanted to do. I was born to create clothing. I was born to design it. And then, it isn't just, it's one thing when someone has an idea in their mind, they think they have some interest in it. And so then they enter university and they pursue it. But it's like you're talking about literally having done it as a young child, probably all through middle school, high school, college. And it feels, I guess it's almost like the person who, is doing it. Sometimes others do it from the pressure of their family. Like we've heard the stereotype story of the young guy that is groomed to be in his father's law firm or something. And now all of a sudden he's 28 years old and he's like, you know what, dude, I'd really rather like make popsicles. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to do this. Like, this is not what I want to do. Right. So, but for you, it's self-imposed.
Absolutely.
It's like, yes, interesting.
Absolutely.
Interesting. That's a big burden. And your message is that you have to find your way through that, that
you
it's
have
okay.
to absolutely you have to really give yourself permission. And obviously
no one else is going to.
No.
Right?
And in the example you gave, of course, that's obviously a relationship with maybe a father and son. But I think in some cases, giving yourself permission can set you free. I really believe
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think it might even be harder when it's yourself, because when
Sure.
it's your relationship with someone else, whether it's a spouse or a parent, you can be oppositional and you can argue it. Whereas it's yourself, you're sort of like, you almost feel like I'm now going to put words in your mouth, but I almost
No,
could
it's okay.
hear you saying to yourself, like, I'm quitting on myself,
Right.
right?
I didn't, I think so many people who I knew and loved and cared for saw all that I accomplished in my fashion design career and associated me so much with those things. So I I had a difficult time with that too, because not only was I trying to find a way for it to be okay for me to move on, but I also didn't want others to discredit me or not really see me in a new light if I were to walk away from that. But
Right.
that has
It's a lot.
changed.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And
Yes.
so how did it change? So walk us through
Yes.
you know, your thought process and how you had to recognize opportunities, or what happened there.
Yes, absolutely. So through the time in my life where I was feeling burnout within the fashion industry and not really sure what was next, I knew it was time for me to do something new, make sure I was creatively fulfilled. Um, and I actually would journal, and I remember writing down in my journal, I will do something in my life that makes me proud, but that makes others happy. So
Hmm.
trying to figure out what that would be, right? Like something that could obviously fulfill me, but also was giving to others at the same time. But because I'm so creatively fulfilled in that way and wanted to obviously find a new path that did all of those things, life presented that to me in a unique way. Throughout the end of 2019, my parents decided to build a new home. And at that similar time, I was helping them along the way. My mom asked me if I could help her design the house. And I was actually very intrigued by the process. And as I was going along with all of these decisions and finding color palettes for each room and all of these different design decisions actually aligned with what I knew from fashion design, which was surprising to me because, again, I thought walking away from something that I knew meant that I had to start completely over in something else.
Interesting. Interesting.
But with that, and as we all know, entering into 2020 and the pandemic, at that time, I was fully able to see my work be appreciated by my family and know how being at home, loving the design of your home, loving the space you create for your family and your loved ones really was fulfilling that piece that I wrote down in my journal. Something I
I
was
love
proud of, something that made others happy. And actually, from that is where the name of my business was created. We obviously spent a lot of time at home, like many other people, but I noticed that I was actually okay and happy to be a homebody. I was
it.
loving it. I had so much fun with my family and really got to bond with them during that time. And I really thought, wow, maybe that is something that I would want to pursue and make that an identity of my brand. So, in those COVID months, I will give context, even though those months turned into years. Um, my mom was sick during that time, so we were caring for her, and that even made the situation that much more special to us to be caring for her in a place that we all loved and we made great memories. So I felt like that, the source of that being the foundation of my brand and my business, and eventually it becoming Homebody Designs, I feel like that is something I come back to and remember whenever maybe I was feeling in a rut with designs or not knowing where my next client is coming from, I always come back to that happiness that I was able to bring my family, and knowing
Mm.
that can be the source of happiness for others too. Looking for a beautiful place to host, a beautiful place to spend time with the ones they love.
Interesting. I love it. So what's interesting is that at the beginning of the journey, when your mom asked you to help her design the house, you hadn't even had the inkling yet that interior design might be the crossover. So
No, I
it's
did
not
not.
right. So that's interesting. So it wasn't as you just were feeling the angst of feeling like fashion design was no longer the calling,
Correct.
but you hadn't had the answer or the whispers of what the new thing would be.
Exactly.
Oh, right. Okay.
And something else I will note is I have always had an entrepreneurial urge. I literally loved the idea of creating a business and making it fully your own. There were no restrictions, there was no other identities involved, and I think having that in the back of my mind throughout really my whole life. As a kid, I had many businesses, whether that was sewing headbands or sewing purses, and selling them in my high school or grade school. I always had that within me, and I didn't really know how it was going to be emphasized in my career or in my future, but interior design definitely is what made that come into fruition for me.
Interesting.
Yes.
Because having listened to the show, I know that we've had lots of designers say the other, that they were working in XYZ field. I'm thinking of Cheryl Luckett was working in corporate in nutrition, and Rashida Gray came from I want to say HR or real estate. I don't know. I can't keep them all straight anymore, right? But Sandra Funk was in finance, right? So
Yes.
it's like the thing is, for a lot of those stories that we've heard over the years, though, it's been the other part of it, which is, and I've always had this love of design.
Mhm.
Whereas for you, it was more, I don't want to do this anymore, but I am not sure yet what I want to do next.
Correct.
And yeah, and then doing the process of the home made you see those similarities from fashion design and how those same superpowers that you were bringing to fashion design could be brought to the home design.
Yes. Which was
Okay.
another
All
form
right.
of encouragement for me, because I think that's something that can feel scary. You don't know what's to come. You don't know. You really become your own boss as well. And I think that's
Mhm.
something that has been very much a way for me to grow. Because being in a corporate world, you're always reporting to a boss or you have a team. However, I really had to create self-discipline and know that my success was fully up to me.
It's real now,
It's
right?
real. It's 100% real. And as scary as that can be, it was also incredibly motivating.
Yeah.
So I think there was just it was really like an aha, but in such a different way than I thought it would ever be.
Right, right, right.
Yes.
It's interesting because it's that final giving yourself permission to do it, right? The
Mm-hmm.
final giving yourself to permission. Um, did it did it come because the process seemed familiar, because you realized, hey, I'm not actually turning the door on this 20 years that I've spent since I'm 8 years old building this? Or did it come from that experience of your family having that gratitude of being like, where did that final, like, all right, this is it? Like, stop with the voices in my head
Right.
that this isn't what I should do. This is what I'm supposed to do.
I think the time with my family in the home we created was definitely sentimental to me. So that definitely was a factor. I think knowing how crazy the world was outside the walls of our home, and knowing that this was our safe space. This is our sanctuary. This is where we spent quality time. No matter what is happening in the world, I wanted to bring that inner homebody to everyone, really. But
Mm.
also from the point that you brought up of, was it the design aspects feeling familiar from fashion to interior? Honestly, it was being able to do what I really felt was a reflection of me and my designs, not designing for brands and their identity, but really being able to own everything that I was designing and having it reflect who I am as a designer.
Interesting.
Yes.
Love it. I love it. So I don't imagine this will happen. I'm not putting any juju on it happening, but I'm just curious because it does seem like a significant process to actually ultimately give yourself permission to walk away from the one career and embrace another. Just do you think if in 10 more years or 15 more years, you started to feel burnt out, like in a legitimate way, not like, this is a hard thing, like not on entrepreneurism, because that's always going to be,
of course,
challenging and hard. But if you do you think you would transition again? Because you're quite young enough that you could be in your late 30s and say, okay, now I want to own restaurants, right? Like, do you think you would give yourself permission to change sooner, or do you think that you've learned anything where you would ask yourself that you would maybe say, is this just being tired and a little bit challenged right now, or is this really me being called to a different thing? You have any, you know what I'm saying?
I do. I absolutely know what you mean. I would say that this chapter of my life has taught me how to give myself permission. So I at least know what I need to do if I feel that is necessary. However, I will confess, I have learned a way for me to not get to that burnt out phase. Which
please do share.
This is a personal preference, but at the same time, I have learned, even in these now 2 short years, that I truly cannot do all the things I want to do solely. I must delegate. And that is something I had a long time telling myself and realizing that, because as I mentioned before, I'm very type A and I want to make sure things are done a certain way. But in order for me to do what I do best in the world of design, and that's where I feel creatively fulfilled, I need to delegate and I need to let go of the things that maybe I'm not good at so that others can be better at it for me and I can be good at what I'm good at. So, as I totally understand your question, I think that I would allow myself, knowing over the years, obviously that's a good amount of time from now, I think I would know what that would feel like, and I would maybe entertain that thought of giving myself permission. But at this phase in my business, I'm also trying to hold on to those lessons I'm learning and allow for them to help me in the future, if that makes sense.
It does. I love it. I love it. And so thinking about that lesson of learning to delegate.
Yes.
So, it's hard to do because you like things done the way you like them done, I'm hearing you say. And it is only 2 years in.
Yes.
So I know that feels like a good amount of time to you, but, from my perspective, I don't know, 2 years is like a minute, right?
Yeah.
So what have you, so speaking to other colleagues that are in the first, 1 to 5 years of their business, I have to say that's not a lesson that I have seen the majority of new business owners learn in the first 2 years is delegation. Usually that's one of the slower lessons. Usually in coaching conversations and just in general conversations, I'm finding out that people hang on to doing what we call the $10 and $100 an hour jobs for way too long. So what kinds of things are you delegating out? What has been your process for feeling comfortable in fighting that fear of like, they're not going to do it as good as me and yada, yada?
So the things that are extremely important to me, which I also feel I have strengths in, are the design portions of the job. I am not delegating those things, and that's where I get the most joy, honestly. For me, it is more so the administrative portions of interior design, like invoices and deliveries and logistics of the job, that I know aren't exclusive to my abilities. And what I've what I've done to allow myself to realize that is first finding out and putting into like reality what I am good at, and noticing that and being aware of that, so that I don't do myself a disservice by delegating those things, because obviously that's a source of joy and why I've even created this path for myself. But also for those who I'm delegating to, I can let go and allow for them to be set up for success, because I'm not holding on to those tasks so tightly.
So I love it. The thing is, have you hired, or are you delegating in-house, or do you outsource? What are you doing?
So I have hired, and I've hired a marketing and business graduate. So that has been helpful on many ends. But what I think is helpful for me is that I also can have a soundboard or a sense of support in what I'm doing as I go through each set of processes behind the interior design world. Because, of course, there is a sense of creativity in marketing as well. So because this new hire has a background in both, I think that could really benefit not only me as the designer, but the business as a whole as well.
Okay. Okay. I love it. And how have you found that process of looking for and hiring and having people work for you? Not so easy always. How's it been for you?
No, not so easy at all.
I love when I ask a question I already know the answer to.
That's okay. We both know the answer.
I sound like it's a neutral question, but I'm like, go ahead, hit me with it. Tell me it was easy. Okay, go ahead.
No, I won't hold back. The answer is no. But I think I also could have been doing myself a disservice because of the high standard I have for the work that I do and the services that I want to deliver to my clients. So, although it has taken me time, I also wasn't sure when the perfect time was, and can I pay this person? And I feel like I toyed with that idea for so long, but I also knew if I didn't do this now, then I couldn't be the best designer that I could be. I couldn't give the best form of services to every one of my clients if I didn't do this. So, yes, it has been a difficult path, but I'm actually really grateful that I kind of put my guard down and I still stuck to my standard of hiring in the work that I wanted, so that not only I can help the betterment of my business, but also that my employee can now learn from me and obviously my entrepreneurial path and my path in interior design.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that it is hard to find good
Yes.
people, hire them, make the commitment, and all the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I love that you're making the dual point here that when you wait too long to hire, whatever that position is that you need, number one, your points are well made that because you're distracted doing other things within your business, your design suffers, the thing that is your superpower and the thing that is giving you joy. Because, if you've got to sit down and figure out the taxes, you can't just do that late. Whereas, God forbid, you don't want to send in your design proposal late either, but,
No.
it's not exactly the government, right?
Exactly.
And so what happens is something suffers, but also it suffers on the other side. So the things in your client journey that you have an admin do for you, if you're not really that good at it and that person loves tying all the bows up and making sure that everybody's got the links for the meetings and all the crap, like if I had to be in charge of sending the links to all of you guys for podcasts, like, my God, I did it for the first 2 years and it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. I was like, did we do it right? Did I send it right? Did it go through? Like,
Right.
it's not my thing.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so what happens is that also doesn't get done as well as when you give it to somebody who enjoys that type of work. So your company suffers on both fronts. It suffers on the thing that you do well because you're not present to do it, and it suffers on the things you don't do well because there are people that do it better than you. Period. End of discussion.
Definitely.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one big lesson that you've learned in 2 years. Okay.
Definitely.
Anything else come to mind as far as, again, you've listened to, hundreds of episodes on the podcast.
Yes.
You know the things that have helped you,
Yes.
but thinking about what do you want to share to help someone else?
So from a interior design perspective and knowing that I've given my past, something that I have been sharing more and more about is how I perceive interior design and how I perceive it uniquely in my eyes. Because of my background, I have been able to look at a home and really create that parallel, like I said, with the fashion industry and the interior design industry, and want to dress people's home like they would dress themselves. Have that same fun excitement in seeing an outfit that you love. And for me, that creates a lot of excitement still. Even though I'm not in the background of fashion, I still truly love it. But I think that's something that I have noticed in these past 2 years. I still have that love for fashion lingering on, and it still keeps coming up for me within my path of interior design. So what I have been doing, which has been very fun and refreshing from a creative standpoint, is actually creating outfits for myself with interiors as my inspiration and vice versa. So I feel like that has allowed for me to marry my past and my present and create an excitement for me that I can now bring to my clients. Allow for them to not feel so overwhelmed by, how do we design this whole home? Oh my gosh, there's so many rooms. Where do I even start? I think giving that little bit or a little tip in how I can approach that for them that might be some form of encouragement has been helpful for me, and honestly has been shedding a whole new light on projects that I've been working on and has kept me inspired, really.
Okay, so I thought I knew where this was going, and now I'm not sure if I do, so I want to clarify.
That's okay.
It. So what I thought that you were leaning into, and you might have been, was that we talk about on the show, you're Fred Burns only, right?
Yes.
Like, what is the thing that makes you different than the designer down the
Yes.
block? And so you're saying that when you are talking with clients and you're approaching design,
Yes.
you're bringing in that sensibility of fashion design,
Yes.
because that's okay. So that's one thing.
That is one
thing.
That. Correct. That's number one.
And so that is one thing you were saying.
Sure.
Like when you're in your discovery calls, when you're in your design process, when you're in your walkthroughs with clients, where it's appropriate and where it makes sense,
Definitely.
You're saying, this is why I'm different, because
Exactly.
I see this as like, now we're getting to the jewelry of the room, or the blah, blah, blah. Or
yes.
this is the, staple pantsuit that everybody needs.
Yes.
Like,
I literally have had clients say, whatever you're wearing, I want that in my room. Like, they literally, whatever that is to them, and people who have that eye, that really catches on to them. And it has.
Okay, so that was my second question.
Yes.
So the first is you're Fred Burns only.
Correct.
But the second is, how does what you're wearing translate into what they want designed or what you're going to design for them? That I'm lost.
Yes. So that was, honestly, that part was a surprise for me. I knew where I was getting inspiration. I knew how I was dressing myself, and the ways that the interior design and the fashion design went hand in hand. But in my very first meeting with a client, I was meeting her in her home, and as soon as I walked up to the door, she said, "Oh, whatever you're wearing, I need this in my home. I need this as inspiration in my home, which for me, I wasn't expecting. However, it was, again, it added that layer of fun for me because that was something that came natural. That was something that was very, it was inspiring me to begin with. So that
So
was,
get me in the weeds
sure,
to really
sure.
visualize what you're talking about. So you're talking about, was it
I can tell
bold
you exactly
colors?
what I
Was
was
it
wearing.
okay?
That I will not forget. I was wearing a black and white tweed set, a jacket and a skirt with some black fringe trim on the end, and I had white loafers with gold buckles. And with that, I was able to obviously get insight to what the client liked to start, but then I was able to use those textures, those colors, trims, things along those lines to really incorporate that throughout, small details throughout the room. Obviously, I wasn't creating a tweed and twill room for this person's design, but I think that was actually, it was very interesting for me to hear, but also it was very helpful to know what the person liked before getting into the depths of the design process.
Okay, so if I'm going to interpret that, what I'm hearing now is she liked a classic
Yes.
approach
Yes.
with a little bit of bling and
Yes.
a little bit of specialty to it to make it feel elevated.
Exactly.
That's what I picture when you picture your outfit.
You got it, LuAnn.
Okay. Okay. No, it makes sense because like if you like, what's so funny is because you must know Rachel Moriarty from listening to the show,
Yes.
and she wears the beautiful I don't know what the hell they're called. They're not muumuus. That's a hard word. That's not the right word.
More like
what does Rachel call them? Oh my God. She's just
she has,
gorgeous in them.
yes,
Like
oh,
all the big flowy
they're almost like
things, right?
kimono-like, but
Yeah,
yes,
right?
yes.
But like and the scarves and the colors and I know that she has said that people follow her in social and meet her locally and they're like, "Yup, the way you are, that's how I want my house to be."
Yes,
Right? There
right.
she is in the San Diego area where all the desert colors and the
Exactly.
ocean colors and the mountain colors are all combining, and Mexico is right there. And so, okay, so I'm getting that idea.
It's self-expression, and I think people get a little bit about where you're coming from before you get into the whole world of design with them.
And this might be like, okay, LuAnn, you just went to crazy land, but like, do you sometimes, if you have met a client once or twice, you're in the project with them, do you sometimes then when you're going to make a presentation, you kind of want them to understand this is the style of the design? Do you then purposely put an outfit on that expresses like the way that outfit expressed like elegance, yes. Classics, all of things.
Yes, I actually
they do it the other way on purpose, is what you're saying.
Right. I naturally dress in that traditional classic way, but okay. I will confess that I love to coordinate my outfit with the end result of every design. So when I am tying a bow on a design and adding decor and things like that, I think that for me is an added form of fun, knowing, okay, everything is complete. We've had so much fun with this. Now I get to have some fun with myself and create an outfit that reflects it.
That's so fun. So like the reveal,
yes,
where you're there with everything, you like just naturally fit right into the photo shoot.
And yes, and I actually have created a segment from time to time on my Instagram that I will do just no projects associated, just for my own self. That's called Home Inspires Body. So a little play on home body designs, obviously, but I will put together outfits that are inspired by things I'm loving within the interior design world right now.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. It's funny. Do you follow Elle Wolf on Instagram? I think it's ELLEC Wolf, I think her name is.
I don't think so. I'll have to follow.
Oh my goodness. She's a designer from, I want to say, the Atlanta area. And I haven't seen or spoken to her in a long time, but there was a period, and probably Instagram is just not showing me her posts any longer. I don't know if she's still doing it or okay. Instagram just isn't showing me her. The algorithm isn't putting her in front of me. But there was a period where she's very fashion forward also, and she has such great taste. And she would do a lot of Instagram posts with it would be a beautiful outfit put together and then related to
Oh, I
interiors
love
and
that.
stuff like that.
I love that.
Yeah, she's very. I used to. I'm not into all the pretty, right? Like I don't like.
Sure.
I don't care to figure it out myself, but I always was impressed with Elle's Instagram feed. I always thought it was
I will
so fun
definitely
and
have to
creative.
follow. I love that.
Yeah,
That's
be
amazing.
interesting to know if she's still doing it. Yeah.
That's great.
So, anyway, okay. So I love all this. So we have this. We have to understand that basically, it's almost a little trust
Mhm.
in yourself too, and what you've learned and you created. It's never going to not be valid or worthwhile. Like you didn't know what was the next career,
Yes.
but the hindsight is that just know that what you spent your time building, you will take it and find it and use it and figure it out somehow that it will show up again for
Yes.
you,
It
right?
will be useful. It will definitely show up for you. And you might not know it in the present. And I think that's something that I constantly think about even now. I think, oh, what am I doing now that is going to be a useful tool for me in the future, or something I'm going to look at in hindsight and be so happy or glad that I had that opportunity or did that a certain way. So
Yeah.
it's definitely it's a learning process, and I think we're always trying to better ourselves and our business and the way that we do things, but it's been really interesting to see how things in my past have guided me to this career path and getting me to where I am and allowing me to be here.
I love it. I love it. So good. And so before I let you go, Maria, what's next? What's on the horizon for you, hopes, dreams, next challenges in your business, or even mundane things? Like if there's, like I didn't even ask you, do you have a handle on your money, your finances? Do you have a good bookkeeper? Are you locking that stuff down?
For me, the business portion, strictly the business, the numbers, the money, I am really trying to get that to a place that I can happily hand to someone and have them manage it. Like I said, delegate it to a place that I feel comfortable, because like I said, again, I am so creatively strong in that way. I have a creative brain, and I tend to outsource for the more business appropriate things. So I think I would love to get buttoned up in that sense. I want to continue to grow and get myself out there. I would love to put more support behind marketing now that I have such a great employee that is able to help with that. So just be creative on all fronts and allow for those who do their job best to do that while I do what I do best.
Okay. Look, I'm all for it, but you know what I'm going to tell you. You have to know how to read and do and figure out the numbers before you can turn them
Yes,
over.
absolutely.
You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. But if you don't understand what they're doing, I have way too many stories of entrepreneurs that have been ripped off by their bookkeepers,
my
by their
goodness.
employees, like legit, like designers walking among you at High Point. Like I could point out a
Yes.
half a dozen that I absolutely know have come to me, just feeling like they're the only person that happened to, and feeling so, you know, sad and
Mhm.
and upset and
Sure.
and self-conscious and vulnerable because of it. But the truth is, if you're like most of us, not everybody in our audience doesn't have the finance DNA, gene, but a lot of us don't, right?
Right.
um it's to me, it's like I don't I'm not sad that I don't have green eyes, but I don't walk
Right.
around and try and, pretend that they're green. So I'm
Correct.
not sad that I don't know how to do numbers, but I don't walk around and pretend that I
That
do
you do.
either.
Right.
So I make sure that the things I need to do, I do, and I
Yes.
have good, you know what I'm saying? It's like
Yes.
you have to know it enough so you can hand it off,
Right.
is what
You
I'm
have
saying.
to educate yourself enough to know how it's supposed to be handled and make sure that the
Yeah.
person's doing it knows that you know. Knows that you
Yeah.
know what
Because it's very easy to get busy on the design side. It's very easy to get busy building the business and then like, oh my goodness, well, I didn't figure it out yet. I don't know how to do it. Okay, so I have to hire a bookkeeper. All right. And then all of a sudden you're 3, 5, 6 years later and you just are 100% reliant on
Right.
the bookkeeper. We've had conversations at LuAnn Live with Lisa Gilmore.
Yes.
She, we have lots of stories. Corey Damon Jenkins shared a story at LuAnn Live in 2019. I mean, the stories are out there. So it's a real thing. So,
but again, that goes back to the beginning. Like, I am just what we talked about, because of the stories that were shared. I'm able to know what to look for because of the guests you've had, because of, I think that's something that really, if I'm being honest, the podcast has been a great tool for me. So I'm grateful for the guests and the stories that were shared, because I've learned more than I could have ever imagined, if we're being honest.
Right. Well, I always say it's like an MBA in business.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Exactly.
It's like, here's where you learn the stuff that nobody taught you.
You're so right. Yes.
So, yeah, experience is the best teacher, and having all of you now included in this, Maria, sharing your experience with your colleagues is the gold, and it is the reason that we're all here and we show up for it. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you for showing up and being called to share your story. It's interesting is it goes your experience in giving yourself permission. I'll just label it easily with that little bow, in changing your career. I learned today was much deeper than what you would think it would be in a casual conversation. So I appreciate your sharing it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. And I will continue to listen. I'm still learning.
I have to say, I really appreciate having had this conversation with Maria and getting a glimpse into this perspective, into this lesson that she had in transitioning from fashion design to interior design. Okay, so let's pull it apart a little bit. First thing is this permission piece that Maria explained she had to overcome. Right? So here's the thing. We know starting a business is scary. There's that part, right? But then what she talked about was adding this other layer of this quote unquote abandoning ship on a successful career to start a business in a different industry, right? So it isn't just the fear that holds us back from taking the plunge into doing something new, but sometimes, as Maria discussed, it's about this internal obligation that you think you have with yourself, right? Like that's a different layer there, okay? And it's not just scary to go back on what you thought you would do, what you've always worked for. She also talked about how it potentially clashes with your identity of who you are and who you show up as in the world and who people look at you as, okay? So this, as she explained, was not an easy thing to overcome. And I admire Maria for not only giving herself permission to say, hey, this is, I'm a fashion designer. I do this and I did it well and I do it well and I could keep doing it well, but I want to do something different now, right? And then the other thing that I admire about her now is that she had the insight to understand this layer of the hang up, this layer of the thing that was kind of holding her back. Because when you face the thing that's holding you back, now it has no power, right? Now you're like, oh, now you get you get to just look at it and make a decision about it, okay, instead of being emotionally pulled to it, okay? The other thing that Maria said that I want to emphasize is that when she was talking about her transition into interior design, she said that she never really realized until she was in the weeds doing design that she was taking all the things from her first career into this. So many of the skills and the practices and the habits and the talents that she cultivated in that career show up in her design business. Okay, so she didn't know that was going to happen. That's the happy, positive, result from it. But think about it. It will happen for you too. You have those things. Nothing that we do is wasted. No experience we have, no lesson we have, no failure we have, no success we have is wasted if we analyze it and take the things from it, right? So if you are out there and you are on the verge of starting an interior design career, maybe you're sitting at a desk in corporate, or you're shelving books in a library, or you're making lattes at Starbucks. I don't care what your experience is. You're building skills that you absolutely can and will use when you come into this industry. Okay. Now, Maria's right, though, that you don't always see it when you're in it, okay? And I'm telling you, because this was my experience with the podcast. In the 7 years that I've been doing this podcast, I cannot tell you how many times I've said to myself in one breath, oh my goodness, I wish I had this idea 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But what I also truly know for 100% is, if I had started it 10 or 20 years ago, I wouldn't have been as good at it. It wouldn't have the thing that it has. And why is that? Because I needed all of that business experience at WindowWorks so that I can have these informed conversations and add to the value of them. Okay? So I thought I was just selling blinds, right? But what I was doing was I was accumulating business acumen, business knowledge, business chops. Right? So when my guests mention things to me and it's like, I'm so glad you asked that. I had the same question in my head, right? Like when they're saying things and you're thinking, oh my God, she just asked the question that I was thinking. How do you do that? Those are not accidents. Those things happen because of the 40 years of the experience I have, because I've walked the walk and been in those shoes, and because I know how to dig a little deeper to get to the heart of what's really underneath of what's being said. But that comes from all of that. So you never really truly know how valuable the experience that you are gaining right now is. And maybe you do own your own interior design firm. And maybe something else is on the horizon for you. Maybe you're going to create new revenue streams in it. Maybe you're going to pivot to another business, and then I'll lose you as a listener, right? But the thing is, what you're doing is important. It always matters. If you're doing it from your true, authentic self, right? And you're doing it to the best of your ability, and you're learning from everything that you do every day, it's never wasted. It's never lost, okay? And at some point, like Maria, you're going to need to trust yourself and give yourself permission so that you can create a well-designed business, right? So Maria, thank you so much for coming here and being vulnerable and sharing with us those two really powerful insights to transitioning from one really spectacular career to what I know will be another spectacular career for you. And thank you for listening. I hope that every single day you do something that helps you up-level your business, that you make a decision to do something that your future self, like my friend Desi Cresswell says, do something your future self will thank you for. Decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of LuAnn Niagara, Inc. If you want to know more about me, my books, or LuAnn University, go to LuAnnNiagara.com. And if you are interested in having WindowWorks help you with your next window treatment or awning project in the New York, New Jersey metro area, go to WindowWorksNJ.com to learn more. Have an excellent day.